Welcome to Hike Point of Sale. In this video, we'll be covering how to integrate Hike with Unleashed. By activating this integration, your business will have a seamless data sync connection between your point of sale software and this powerful inventory management software. By pairing these two softwares together, you can forego laborious manual data entry, and you can ensure precise accuracy of your data between the two platforms as it will sync between Hike and Unleashed. Now please note that the Unleashed integration is only supported in our current one-store subscription plans and higher. Please check your subscription to make sure that you do have access to this integration. Also note that due to API limitations in the way that the sync is designed, if you do make any changes to your data in Unleashed, you will have to trigger a manual sync via Hike to send this data back from Unleashed back over to Hike. Whereas Hike has an automatic sync in place, and what this means is if you make a change in the product in Hike, they will automatically sync that data through to Unleash, but if you make a change to a product in Unleash, you will have to trigger a manual sync process. Now before you begin with starting the integration, we do definitely recommend that you take a backup of all your Hike data as well as any existing Unleash data that you might have available. This way, in case there's any issues, you can revert back. So please get in contact with the Unleashed support team in order to find out how to back up your Unleashed data if required. And similarly, you can get in contact with the Hike support team as well in terms of backing up your products, your customer, and any supply data in your Hike store. Now, we do also strongly recommend that you have one of the areas, either Hike or Unleash, with clean product data and any of the data you're syncing across for inventory, suppliers, and customer data again. This way, when the sync is turned on, it will transfer the data through correctly, and then you won't need to update the information later on. So it's a matter of choosing an area where you're going to keep the data. In most cases, we recommend to keep all the data within Hike, and from there, it will sync all that data across through to Unleashed. Now, once you've done this, the next thing we need to check firstly is to make sure that your tax rate settings are set up correctly. So in your Hike store, you will need to go to your tax rules area. So in the store setup, the tax rules button. And by selecting this, it will come up with your tax rates. So depending on your country and the region that you're in, you may have custom tax rates assigned. And you need to make sure that these tax rules match up with the mappings for the tax rules that are in your Unleashed area. So if we go to our Unleashed administration area, once again you need to go to the settings of the Unleashed administration area, go to system, and then scroll down and select the taxes button. This will bring you over to the taxes area of Unleashed, and once again, depending on the region that you're in, you'll need to create your correct tax rules to map between Hike and Unleashed. Unleashed does provide some standard tax rule information depending on the region that you're in as well. So they may already be listed here, but if they're not, you'll have to create them and so that they can be mapped when the integration is turned on. The next thing we want to do is to go over to the Unleash integration area. So to do this, we need to scroll up on the left side of the Unleash management area and go to the integrations tab. So by selecting this, this will come out with the integrations area where we can select the Unleashed API access option. So this is what allows us to sync between Hike and Unleashed. So by selecting this, this is going to come up with your API key and your API ID. So these are the details that we require, and you need to cut and copy these to be pasted into your Hike integration area. So if you go to the store setup and the integrations area of your Hike store, we can now go over to the Unleashed integrations area. So you may need to scroll down on the screen to find the Unleashed section, and we can simply activate it by selecting the activate button now. So this is going to bring you through to a new window which is going to ask you for the API ID and API key that we had copied from our Unleashed management area. So if you paste these into these fields and select save, this will now go over to the management area of the integration. So now that the details are pasted in here, if we select save, it's going to attempt to connect between Hike and Unleashed. So now that it's connected, we can see here that we've reached the Unleashed management area where we can fill in some details. So the first thing we want to do is to be able to define unleashed product codes for custom sale items, as well as unleashed product codes for any tips and surcharge that are collected in Hike. So we will do this by going over to the Unleashed platform and creating these particular product fields. So in your Unleashed area, you want to go over to the inventory column, select products, and select add product. So the two products we're creating, the first one will be for Hike custom sales. This is to ensure that if you make a custom sale in your Hike store, the details of the sale will get synced over to Unleashed correctly. So it doesn't require any inventory as such because it's a custom item, but it's here so that we can sync that information across. So if we create a product code called Hike custom, and we select save, this will now create a product called Hike custom in Unleashed. Similarly, if we select add product again, we'll want to create a product as well for any tips that you maybe receive. So we'll call this Hike tips. And the product description is for Hike tips and surcharges. Again, by saving this will allow us to sync this information across. Now the last thing we want to check in terms of mappings is the actual Hike register for processing sales. Now Unleashed does allow you to process sales within the Unleashed environment as well. So if you are planning on doing this, you need to make sure that you have a register assigned for that. So in Hike, you can go over to your store setup and your outlets and registers. And here you can define your cash registers. For the purposes of this video, we won't be covering any further details to how to create registers, but if you do need further advice on this, feel free to contact our Hike support team by clicking the Need Help button and selecting the chat with support. Now we have a specific register created for integration sales here, and this is ordered to ensure that if you do process sales at the same time as your retail environment and any integrations area, you're not getting duplicate invoice numbers being assigned. This is a similar process if you have multiple registers that are processing sales in a retail environment as well. And each integration is recommended to have its own register if it's going to be processing sales. So once we've got the register created now, we can just go back to our integrations area. And if we scroll down to Unleashed area again, we can select the Manage option. So each time you click the Manage option, it will refresh all the mappings that occur, so that we can double check if, for instance, if any outlet information is not there or any register information is not there. So again, for our Unleashed setting, you can define the outlets that you want the inventory to come out of if you have multiple outlets listed. And once again, you have to define a register for payments to come out of. So we've got our integration sales register that we have created, and that's assigned to the Glen Waverley area. Once again, if we put in our Hike custom product code that we created in Unleashed and our Hike tips product code, this will ensure that any sales that are sent through from Hike over to Unleashed get tracked accordingly. After that, there's a common customer name for any walk-in sales, so customer details are required within Unleashed. So it will enter in just the standard default and you can update these as required. After that, below here, you can now map your Hike outlets and Unleashed warehouses together, or you can merge multiple outlets to a single location. You may need to speak to someone who manages your Unleashed area to see how you want to set this up. For the purposes of this video, we'll be mapping each of these Hike outlets to the head office and the main warehouse that we defined earlier. Once again, also for our tax mappings, we want to map these that we've defined earlier. So again, we have the no tax option for Unleashed sales, and again purchase tax, and similarly for the GST option, we'll be mapping the taxes as required. So the last thing we want to do is to define the sync settings between Hike and Unleashed. So you have options here in setting it up to be two-way syncing for your customers, products, sales, and purchase orders. Now just be aware that supplier data can only be synced from Unleashed to Hike. The Unleashed system doesn't actually support syncing data from Hike over to Unleashed for supplier data in particular. For all the other options, you can define whether or not you want it to be two-way, or one-way Hike to Unleashed, or one-way Unleashed to Hike. So you may need to discuss this with your Unleashed person that manages the system, as well as getting in contact with Hike as well if you want to decide how you want to manage your inventory and the data flow between Hike and Unleashed. For the purposes of this video, we will just be selecting two-way syncing where possible, just to demonstrate how the data flows through. So if you try to hover over the supply area, you will show you that Unleashed does not support this. So all we can do here is to select the Unleashed to Hike option. So once we've selected our sync settings appropriately, we can just select the continue button, which is going to bring you over to the first time sync screen. Now in this area, this is where you define the information that will get synced through from Hike or between Hike and Unleashed initially. So you basically want to decide where you have the point of truth of your data. So if most of your data is located within Hike initially, then you'll be syncing from Hike to Unleashed. If most of your data initially is inside Unleashed, then you'd be selecting the other option. And from there, you can also sync your past transactions for your sales data, but please be aware that there are the following limitations where Unleashed does not allow Hike to create supply profiles, as mentioned earlier. So supplier data cannot be synced from Hike over to Unleashed. And Unleashed also does not allow the syncing of unfulfilled purchase orders. So if we select Save and Sync now, the system will now attempt to sync all that data between the two platforms depending on the settings that you've specified. Now depending on the amount of data that you're syncing between Hike and Unleashed, it can take a bit of time for the information to sync across for all of your products, inventory, and any sales data that you're sending between the two platforms. So once we've allowed sufficient time for the sync to occur, we can simply just check to see if our products are appearing in both platforms. So in our case, we're syncing Hike products over to the Unleashed side. So we're checking a few example products. So if we go to the products and the products area of Hike, and if we search for a couple of our products such as milk, which will bring up an item with an SKU of 1004U, and we'll check another product such as juice, which is going to come up with an SKU for a variant. And if we open up this product quickly and check the variants out, we can see that a couple of variants are listed here. So if we simply go over to our Unleashed area, we can go over to the inventory, products, and view products area. And if we select view products just to refresh it quickly, we can type in milk here and press enter, and we can see here that the product code matches with what we had in Hike, so the product has been synced through. And if we check the juice products out quickly as well, we can also see that the juice variants have also been synced across to Unleashed from Hike. So we've verified that the sync is working and that you've activated your Unleashed integration correctly. So if we go back to your Hike store from here and just go back to the integrations area, if you do require any further assistance with setting up the integration for Unleashed, simply go over to this button here, which goes over to the how-to article, and clicking this will open up a new window that will bring you over to the support article for how to integrate Unleashed. If you still have any further questions with this, feel free to get in contact with our Hike support team by selecting the Need Help button on the top right and selecting the Chat with Support option, or alternatively you can submit a ticket as required. Thank you for your time.